Coming up next, I got a scary story for you. Our story revolves around a singer-composer who stayed in a haunted room where 7 people were murdered, brutally murdered. He was told he might see their ghost because it was haunted, but by the morning he had an idea for a song that would become one of the most recognizable of the 80s. But the thing is, even though this composer has written dozens of the most recognizable songs in both radio and film history, he's never had a hit song. In fact, you could make the argument that his group is the greatest band in history never to have an actual hit. Coming up next, the true story of the haunted room that spawned his biggest claim to fame, and its aftermath is coming up next. Hey, music junkies, Professor of Rock, always here to celebrate the greatest artists and the greatest songs of all time. You know, if you celebrate Halloween with the music of the Monster Mash, Ghostbusters and Thriller and all those great classics, you're going to love this channel of music nostalgia overload. Make sure to subscribe below. Check the box so that you never miss out on all of our interviews and videos. Check out our Patreon as well. So today we present to you our Halloween special. You know, when I think of Halloween, for some reason I always think of this song. And I don't quite know why, because I thought of this song before this particular composer did Nightmare Before Christmas. This is one of my favorite bands due to its creator, whom I consider to be a true experimental genius, Danny Elfman. He's composed countless film and TV scores, and he's the mastermind behind the band Oingo Boingo.
Walking with the dead man on my shoulder.
He's what they call an autodidact, a self-taught musician, no real formal training in composition or the recipient of a music degree. Danny Elfman blossomed in his late teens. You know, he awakened an innate gift for classical theory and orchestration. Now, not only did Danny Elfman succeed without the benefit of a scholastic education in the arts, he's one of those rare people that simply didn't need school to excel. Actually, Danny Elfman was a high school dropout who didn't even pick up a musical instrument until he started noodling around with a violin when he was about 16. I mean, until that point, Elfman appeared to be headed for a completely different career path. He demonstrated an aptitude for science, not for music. In fact, young Danny was rejected from joining the elementary school orchestra. Get this, he was told by the school advisors that he had no propensity for music. The so-called system had a different plan for Danny Elfman. Kind of reminds me of that scene from the movie Caddyshack where Ty Webb, the wealthy, aloof entrepreneur character played by Chevy Chase, and he shares with Caddy, Danny Noonan, what the career aptitude test he took in high school revealed to him.
You were a senior in high school?
Oh, yeah, I took it. They said I should be a fire watcher.
Elfman's future was set for good when he switched high schools and started hanging out with a new crowd of musicians that introduced Danny to the work of Stravinsky, and his 20th century contemporaries. Now, it was in his late teens that Danny began to practice music notation. He started transcribing the works of jazz legends like Duke Ellington. Danny Elfman traveled extensively in the early 70s, playing the violin in parts of Europe. Then he spent time in Africa studying bambara percussion. He returned to America to join his older brother Richard, who assembled a musical theater troupe called Mystic Knights of the Oingo Boingo. Richard gradually lost interest in the troupe and he wanted to focus on making films, so he turned the reins over to Danny, and the Mystic Knights began to generate a cult following in Los Angeles. The highlight of the Mystic Knights of Oingo Boingo was a dubious one. They appeared on national TV on an episode of Chuck Barris's The Gong Show in 1976, and they won the competition, scoring 24 out of a possible 30, with a bizarre performance that featured a purple dragon and a gaseous rocket man. Also in 1976, the Mystic Knights released a doo-wop-styled novelty record about the infamous Patty Hearst kidnapping called You Got Your Baby Back, with Elfman showcasing his distinctive vocals that would later become one of the most prominent voices on alternative rock radio.
Silly young thing was just a
When Danny Elfman reached his 27th year, he realized that he wanted to start a rock band. He wasn't too well versed with popular music of the day, because he was doing jazzy big band material with the Mystic Knights. But then he heard music by the Selector, ska music. Selector, the Specials, and the highbrow left to center rock by Andy Partridge and XTC. Overnight, Elfman was finished with musical theater, and he decided to put the Mystic Knights to rest and create a rock band, and he just shortened the name to Oingo Boingo. The first 3 albums by Oingo Boingo were mind and body experiences full of thought-provoking lyrics and Elfman's eccentric brilliance. In 1984, while developing material for the 4th record by Oingo Boingo, Elfman became aware of a haunted hotel in downtown Salt Lake City, Utah, with a horrific past that inspired the writing of Oingo Boingo's signature track, Dead Man's Party. It's a dead man's party. Who could ask for more? So it all stemmed from an unbelievable tragedy that happened at the International Dunes Hotel on a beautiful summer morning on August 3rd, 1978. A woman by the name of Rachel David and her 7 children were living at the hotel at this time. David was the widow of Emmanuel David, a self-proclaimed prophet of God who committed suicide just 3 days before that. Emmanuel David was feeling the pressure of federal authorities who were on the verge of arresting him on charges of fraud and embezzlement. Rather than facing certain prison time, he elected to abandon his wife and kids, and he took his own life. He died of carbon monoxide poisoning, actually. What happened on the morning of August 3rd, 1978, was one of the most horrific examples of religious fanaticism in American history. Rachel David convinced her 7 children that it was God's will to join their father in the afterlife. And she took them to the balcony of the 11th floor. And then one by one, the children jumped off the balcony to their death on the street below. Rachel was the very last to leap. The oldest child miraculously survived the fall, but would live the rest of her life with severe brain damage, bound to a wheelchair. And shortly after that grisly incident, guests of the hotel reported hearing the disembodied voices of children running and playing throughout the hotel. Many called it haunted, and their experiences there. Danny Elfman and Oingo Boingo actually stayed at the hotel when it was renamed the Shiloh Inn in 1984. As of 2022, it is a Holiday Inn Express. Elfman was fascinated by the ghostly activity, and he frequently stayed on the hotel's infamous 11th floor, where the ghosts of the David children were said to be the most active. Elfman began to write lyrics for a song about a man who had just died, and he attends a party where no one's still alive. Dead Man's Party evolved into a song focused on the macabre side of pop culture. Danny Elfman definitely incorporating parts of classic hair-raising literature and film. The original line that Elfman riffed off to write his tale was the phrase, "room for one more." That was taken from the short story about a hearse driver from The Supernatural by E.F. Benson. It was titled The Bus Conductor. That was first published in the Pall Mall magazine in 1906. Elfman extended the phrase in the 4th verse of his narrative with the arrival of a chauffeur. I hear the chauffeur coming to my door, so there's room for maybe just one more. Room for one more, that was also used in the script of episode 22 from the classic TV series The Twilight Zone, where a sinister nurse taunts the episode's heroine played by Barbara Nichols, informing her that the morgue has room for one more, honey.
Room for one more, honey.
The lyric heard in the first verse of "Walking with a Dead Man Over My Shoulder," that's a spin on the prison phrase "dead man walking," referring to a condemned prisoner who has been given a death sentence.
Walking with a dead man over my shoulder.
The chorus of Dead Man's Party, that features the passage, "I was struck by lightning walking down the street." The line is a nod to one of the most iconic horror films ever, the original Frankenstein that was released in 1931. In that classic adaptation of the Mary Shelley novel, The monster, played by Boris Karloff, the master, he's strapped in a hospital bed in Dr. Frankenstein's laboratory, elevated to the top of a tower, and comes to life after being struck by lightning. Elfman loved the original Frankenstein movie and used perhaps its most famous scene for the opening of Oingo Boingo's track, Weird Science.
It's alive! In the name of God!
Going back to Elfman's fourth verse, the first two lines, I got my best suit and tie, shiny silver dollar on either eye. That's Elfman cleverly adding that creepy ritual from Greek mythology where silver dollars were placed in the eye sockets of a corpse to act as a weight to keep the eyelids closed. According to the Greek legend, the dead would use the silver dollars to pay the ferryman to cross the river Styx, to get from the earth to the underworld. Styx is also known as the goddess of the river, the source of the river's miraculous powers. Dead Man's Party represents many of the elements that made Oingo Boingo such an interesting, captivating band. Obviously, Elfman's wide-ranging vocal flamboyance and his wonderfully crazy orchestration is the centerpiece. But the other members of the band provided inspired musicianship for a complete team effort on the recording of Dead Man's Party. Let's start with Steve Bartek, who played lead guitar on the track. The communication between Elfman and Bartek had an uncanny telepathic cadence. Bartek's edgy licks were, in essence, the responding instrument to Elfman's lead vocal on Dead Man's Party. Bartek was invaluable to the unique sound of Oingo Boingo. He's been a trusted Elfman collaborator for well over 4 decades, going all the way back to the days of the Mystic Knights in the early 70s. Bartek was also known for his work on the first studio albums by Strawberry Alarm Clock, the makers of that mesmerizing psychedelic pop hit, Incense and Peppermints. With Strawberry Alarm Clock, Bartek was not a guitarist. He actually played the flute. Core member John Avila. He was an amazing bassist who delivered backup vocals and provided the quirky accents of a keytar on Dead Man's Party. And then Johnny Vados Hernandez was wicked on the drums, pivotal to Boingo's intense punctuating melodic rhythm. The horn section was an incredibly vital component of Oingo Boingo that set them apart from all the other groups. There was Sam Phillips on tenor sax, Leon Schneiderman on baritone and alto sax, and Del Turner blowing the trombone and trumpets. Contribution of that trio of musicians made Elfman's Dead Man's Party sound like a swinging party for the living. And Mike Bakich put in perhaps his best work for the keyboard solo of Dead Man's Party. Well, in 1985, Danny Elfman created a musical score that would once again change the course of his career, but unfortunately lead to the inevitable dissolution of Oingo Boingo. Elfman was asked to submit a score for the movie Pee-wee's Big Adventure. The opportunity really excited, but also terrified Elfman. When he submitted the music to Warner Brothers and director Tim Burton, he thought it was going to be thrown in the trash, actually. He thought he would never be asked to score a film again. But the studio loved it. So did Burton. It was the catalyst for a fruitful artistic partnership between Elfman and Tim Burton, of course. Burton heard the genius in Elfman long before he composed the theme for Pee-wee's Big Adventure. He was a big Oingo Boingo fan, actually. Burton would go on to hire Elfman for virtually all of his films in the late 80s and 90s, including Batman in '89. Edward Scissorhands. Alice in Wonderland, Beetlejuice, and The Nightmare Before Christmas, which featured a revised version of Dead Man's Party in the closing credits, if you remember.
It's a dead man's party. could ask for more?
The first movie to feature Dead Man's Party was the Rodney Dangerfield comedy Back to School. That was in 1986. In that scene, Oingo Boingo is booked to play a party hosted by eccentric millionaire Thornton Mellon, played by Dangerfield. Classic. I love that scene. I used to watch it all the time, over and over in high school especially.
Walking with the dead man.
Halloween and all its spooky splendor was an important time of the year for Oingo Boingo and their fans, especially in Southern California. And every year the band would perform an annual concert on Halloween at a venue in LA or Orange County. It was actually fitting that Oingo Boingo played their farewell concert on Halloween night in 1995 at the defunct Universal Amphitheater in Los Angeles.
It's a dead man's party. Who could ask for more?
The disbanding of Oingo Boingo at the end of their farewell tour in late 1995, huge bummer, but it was not surprising. I mean, Danny Elfman had achieved the revered status as one of the most coveted composers in Hollywood. And the 17 years fronting Oingo Boingo caused significant hearing loss, actually. It was time to move on for professional and for personal reasons. So Elfman would not be making music with Oingo Boingo, but he had so many amazing compositions yet to come to fruition that would really become some of the most beloved and enduring in modern day pop culture. Think about it. Elfman has composed more than 100 movie scores in his career, along with numerous TV themes, including Tales from the Crypt, Desperate Housewives, and of course his opus, written in 1989, the theme from The Simpsons. Like I said, the man is a genius. The first time I heard Boingo was in 1986. That's when I saw Back to School. And then I saw Weird Science on VHS at a friend's house. I was hooked. I was just loving their strange, ethereal sound. And I got a few albums doing the Columbia House 12 albums for a penny scam. And by the early 90s, I had them all. Strangely enough, Oingo Boingo, all the great songs they wrote, they didn't have a single top 40 hit. Closest they got was Weird Science, which finished just outside at number 45. And yet they have more classic songs than many artists who rule the charts. I mean, Just Another Day, which was recently used in Stranger Things. Out of Control, Not My Slave. Private Life, We Close Our Eyes. I could go on and on and on and on.
This is my private life.
I'm gonna say it. They're the greatest band in history to never have a hit. Meanwhile, the legacy of Dead Man's Party and Oingo Boingo just lives on, with Danny Elfman still waiting for an invitation to arrive, walking with a dead man over his shoulder, and imploring us not to fear the unknown. Don't be afraid of what you cannot see. It's only me. It's only me. Happy Halloween, everybody. Hey, leave us a comment about Oingo Boingo and Dead Man's Party. What does this song mean to you? What is your interpretation of it? Let us know your memories. Let's get a really good discussion going. What other great Halloween songs are there? Just list them below. If you like our content, make sure to subscribe so that you never miss out on our daily videos. We'd love to have you as part of our community. Until next time, 3 chords and the truth, my friend.